I'm Karima Brown. It's a Sunday and it's time for The Fix. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold those in power to account. We tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. The death of George Floyd while in custody in the United States has globalized the struggle against racism. Thousands took to the streets across the world to pledge solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been leading the struggle against police brutality, mass incarceration and structural racism in that country. So how does the struggle in the US resonate here in South Africa, a country many hold up as an example of how apartheid was defeated? To help unpack this issue, I'm joined by the ANC's veteran Paulo Jordan, as well as Dr. Oscar van Heerden. Dr. van Heerden, let me start with you. We saw this weekend, on Saturday to be exact, President Donald Trump addressing a crowd in Tulsa in the US, a town that of course has a rich history in the struggle against racism, being a very, very divisive figure. And of course many people are saying that this is a tipping point. The stadiums weren't full. Do you think that Donald Trump is in fact in trouble? And to what extent is Black Lives Matter a contributing factor to him being in trouble when it comes to re-elections?
Thanks. Good morning, Karima, and to the viewers. I mean, I think he is in trouble to the extent that, as you know, the US is going to the general elections in November, presidential elections. He is hoping to return for a second term to office. But a combination of factors is weighing very heavily against him. In no small measure, of course, the Black Lives Matter movement, the fact that just one additional, yet another killing of a black man, George Floyd, led to a number of protests throughout the country and indeed sparked movement throughout the world against racism. And the fact that he is so divisive in this period, wanting to call in the military, wanting to bring in militia to deal with this issue and these people, I think that he is in trouble. But I do still think that he has large support. And we shouldn't write him off. All right,
let me bring Paulo Jordan in here. Paulo, Trump not looking as bolshy as people would have expected at this rally in Tulsa. But I mean, you can't underestimate someone like him. That was the mistake people did in the first place, and of course he got elected. What do you think the main weakness of the Trump administration is in terms of dealing with the Black Lives Matter?
Well, I think Trump's biggest problem, are his own attitudes, and then secondly, the attitudes of the constituency he has consistently appealed to during his electoral campaign, etc., and since. And his own attitudes, as you know, are not the most progressive. Trump's properties used to exclude people of African descent, from acquiring, renting property from them, etc. So he himself has got very deeply racist attitudes. The constituency he has appealed to seem to think that African Americans and other people of color now are privileged as against whites. I don't know how they reach that conclusion, but that's what they seem to believe. So that is his biggest single problem, that he won't be able to understand what Black Lives Matter is about. And then secondly, I suppose he probably dismisses the lives of people who are not white. As he has said, African countries, Caribbean countries are shithole countries.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that he also did, both Paulo and Oscar, was, ramp up the rhetoric against China. And, of course, he's been trying to attach COVID-19 to China. He spoke about, the Chinese virus, talking about the Kung flu, as in Kung Fu flu, constantly, of course, berating China. And, of course, this has massive geopolitical significance. There is a sense that the tensions between the US and China will kind of spill over. Do you think that a tense standoff with China, Oscar, is something that benefits the Trump campaign?
Well, I think, Karima, politics is perception, and I think the Trump administration knows this. They, of course, behind closed doors, mollycoddle to China, understands the importance of the trade relations and so forth. But for the purposes of this campaign, going for the presidential campaign, China will certainly be made out to be the enemy. China is to be blamed for the virus as far as Trump is concerned, and he wants to send that message home, his support base. And it is for the purposes of wanting to make sure that he takes no responsibility for the devastation that has been caused by the virus in the United States. The lackadaisy affair approach by his administration at the beginning of this pandemic, getting very late out of the starting blocks, in a way almost seeing it as a joke and that it will be overcome very quickly, all of which is now to be very wrong, very incorrect, and a serious lack of leadership from his part. So it is convenient to want to blame the Chinese now.
Paulo, the question of the struggle against racism being globalized is, of course, something that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. We've seen people in every capital in the world marching. The participation from other groups has been huge. You've noted, for example, before, the non-racial character of some of the participants. Do you think that finally there is a realization that the struggle against racism is something that needs to galvanize the larger section of society, and that it cannot just be the responsibility of black people, in the globe, whether it's in the US or in South Africa, that needs to take on the struggle against racism?
No, this is very true. And I think what we've seen over the last few weeks is a very good example of solidarity amongst people on the issue of race and racism. Obviously, the people who always take the lead in the struggle against racism are those who are the worst affected by it. So, of course, people of African descent, people of Latino descent, people of Asian descent in various parts of the world have been at the vanguard of the struggle against racism. But I think what has happened is that we have reached, I suppose, something of a watershed in the struggle against racism, in that first in the United States, you had thousands of whites coming out onto the streets, and then in other parts of the world as well, including the arch-colonialist country, Britain, where I'm glad to see the statue of Cecil John Rhodes is coming down in Oxford University. And we've had statues like that of Slaver Colston in Bristol being torn down. And you've got similar examples happening, I think, in the United States with Confederate generals and others, statues being brought down. I hope we'll see something similar in Belgium with the notorious colonialists like King Leopold, who used to have people's hands cut off because they couldn't produce enough rubber. I would like to see his statue come down as well.
So the issue of statues, of course, caught the imagination of people, not just in other parts of the world, but here. I mean, we've had a student at UCT start, of course, literally taking feces and throwing it at the statue of Cecil John Rhodes at UCT. And in the UK, the question around the role of Winston Churchill has now become a major issue. And some people are arguing that, the role of Winston Churchill and the demand that statue comes off is kind of a bridge too far, and that history needs to be remembered, whether it's good or bad. Oscar, your take on what should happen to statues of people who were essentially remembered for their role in colonization, in slavery, in the subjugation of, most of the developing world as we know it today.
Yeah. I mean, I think emotionally, I agree with a lot of the sentiments that says that these statues need to come down. But I do, however, want to perhaps also caution and say we need to be a bit more circumspect, because these statues are representatives of their time. And I'll say two things, Karima. The one is that these very statues that people are now saying must come down, must fall, etc. What I find ironic about it is that the very empire in Britain, the very fact that Europe finds itself in such a good financial, economic status due to slavery and colonialism, is not being challenged. That fundamental system is not being challenged, yet we are going for symbols. It's like it's the easy way out. Of course, roads must fall. Yes, the statue probably must come down. But let's not forget that that empire and the things, the opportunities that a lot of Europeans and the British people enjoy is on the back of colonialism and slavery. So it seems to me that instead of wanting to exert your energies in making sure that statues come down, if you truly want to change the lives of black people in the world, then it is that very fundamental systems that needs to be challenged.
All right, let's take a break for now. Let's take a break, Oscar, for now. When we come back, we look at why racism in South Africa is, of course, still a main driver in society 25 years into democracy. Don't go anywhere.